Have you ever felt like something invisible is holding you back, no matter how hard you try? You set goals, you make plans, you promise yourself that this time you'll push through, but somehow you always end up stuck in the same place. If you felt this way, you're not alone. Most people spend their entire lives fighting a battle they don't even realize they're in. Over 80 years ago, a man named Napoleon Hill sat down with Andrew Carnegie, one of the most successful people of his time. In that meeting, Carnegie challenged Hill with a mission to discover why people fail and why only a few manage to succeed. He asked Hill to uncover the hidden barriers within the human mind that sabotage success and keep us from reaching our true potential. After decades of research, interviewing thousands of people, and closely examining both their successes and failures, Hill finally found the answer. He uncovered a force he called the devil. But this devil isn't some red creature with horns. It's far more insidious. It's the voice inside your head, whispering doubt every time you're about to step outside your comfort zone. It's the procrastination that convinces you to put off important tasks until tomorrow. It's the fear of judgment, failure, or even success that keeps you drifting aimlessly through life, avoiding risks and never truly living. Think about it. How many times have you stopped yourself from speaking up in a meeting, pursuing a dream, or taking that bold step you've always imagined? How often do you let hesitation and self-doubt make your decisions for you? The devil Hill describes as nothing more and nothing less than your own internal resistance, the quiet but powerful force that traps you in patterns of mediocrity. Today in this video, we're going to expose this hidden enemy, confront your fears head-on, and reveal exactly how to regain control of your mind and your life. Because the truth is, the only thing powerful enough to stop you is you. Are you ready to finally break free from fear's silent control? Let's dive deeper and uncover how you can begin this transformation right now. What if I told you that the greatest power you'll ever have isn't something you need to earn, buy, or chase? It's something already inside you. That's exactly what Napoleon Hill discovered in one of the most transformative moments of his life. In Chapter 2 of Outwitting the Devil, Hill describes a turning point that didn't come from the outside world. It didn't come from money, fame, or opportunity. It came from a moment of awakening, a realization that true change begins when we stop running from ourselves and start listening to the voice within. He calls this inner guide the other self. It's that part of you that doesn't shrink in fear, doesn't doubt your worth, and doesn't settle for less than you're capable of. Hill had already spent decades studying success and failure. He had interviewed hundreds of the world's most influential people, industrialists, inventors, political leaders. He had developed principles of achievement that would go on to shape self-help philosophy for generations. But even after all that, he found himself lost, broke, and emotionally drained. On Christmas Eve, in a small home filled with disappointment rather than celebration, Hill sat down at his typewriter with nothing but an overwhelming urge to write. Something inside him, something strong, clear, and unshaken, was pushing him forward. That something was his other self. It wasn't logic or reason that guided him that night. It wasn't optimism or motivation. It was faith, not in a higher power, but in his own ability to rise from failure. It was an unshakable trust that no matter how dark things seemed, he still had control over the most important piece of his life, his mindset. He began typing, and page by page, he brought to life the philosophy that had been forming in his heart for years. That moment, that choice to act from belief instead of fear, marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just in his work, but in who he was. Most people don't talk about faith in themselves. They talk about confidence, success, hard work. But real self-belief is quieter and more powerful than all of those. It's what keeps you moving when you have no proof that things will work out. It's what lets you stand up and try again after failure knocks the wind out of you. And most importantly, it's what allows you to hear your other self when the rest of the world is telling you to give up. Hill's story isn't just a historical anecdote, it's a mirror. His awakening was a reminder that even the most knowledgeable, experienced people can feel lost. And even in your lowest moments, you still have the power to turn the tide. Maybe you're in that place right now. Maybe life hasn't gone the way you expected. Maybe you've lost direction, or confidence, or clarity. But ask yourself, have you ever had a moment that completely changed how you see yourself? A moment where, even briefly, you felt something stronger than fear guiding you? That's your other self speaking. And it's still there, waiting for you to listen. This other self isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg for your attention. It waits. And when you're quiet enough, honest enough, and ready enough, it shows up. It shows up when you stop trying to be perfect and start being present. It shows up when you stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I succeed? It shows up when you decide to move forward, even if no one else believes in you yet. There's a reason Hill says this awakening was unlike anything he'd ever experienced, because it wasn't just a mindset shift, it was a change in identity. He stopped seeing himself as someone who was defeated and started seeing himself as someone who was being prepared. He understood that what he had gone through wasn't a punishment. It was a path, a painful one, yes, but necessary. The fear, the doubt, the depression, they weren't signs of weakness. They were signs that something deeper was trying to emerge. And the same is true for you. Whatever challenges you're facing, they are not the end of your story. They might just be the beginning. Your awakening won't look exactly like Hill's. It might come during a walk, in a conversation, while journaling, or even in the middle of a breakdown. But when it comes, you'll know. You'll feel a calm strength take over. You'll realize that you don't need permission to take control of your life. You just need the courage to believe in yourself again. This isn't about pretending everything is fine. It's about trusting that you're capable of making things better. It's about choosing belief over fear, action over excuses, faith over doubt. That's the real power of the other self. It won't live your life for you, but it will guide you, strengthen you, and remind you who you really are when the world tries to make you forget. So if you've been waiting for a sign to trust yourself again, this is it. Your other self has been waiting patiently. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to let it lead. Imagine sitting face to face with your fear, not as a vague feeling in your chest, not as something abstract or hard to define, but as a living voice, answering your questions, explaining exactly how it works against you. That's what Napoleon Hill imagined in Chapter 3 of Outwitting the Devil. In one of the most haunting and profound metaphors in personal development literature, Hill constructs a fictional interview with the devil himself, who, as it turns out, is not a supernatural demon, but the embodiment of fear, doubt, procrastination, and mental laziness. This devil doesn't rule people through force or violence. He controls them through subtlety, by quietly convincing them to give up control of their own minds. And once you give up your mind, you give up your life. In this metaphorical conversation, Hill forces the devil to confess how he operates. What he learns is startling. The devil doesn't chase people. He waits for them to surrender. He doesn't need to drag people into failure. They drift there on their own. He feeds off indecision, uncertainty, and fear of criticism. He lives in the minds of people who are too scared to think for themselves, too distracted to focus, too unsure to take action. His greatest weapon is fear. And once fear gets a foothold in your thinking, it spreads like smoke filling a room, making everything harder to see, harder to breathe, harder to move. Hill describes fear as a parasite that doesn't just affect your emotions. It affects your clarity, your creativity, your ability to make decisions. Fear tricks you into thinking that staying still is safer than moving forward. It convinces you to wait until the right time, to overthink, to play small. And every time you hesitate, every time you hold back an idea, avoid a challenge, or silence your own voice, fear wins a little more control. The devil doesn't steal your dreams. He persuades you to give them up voluntarily, little by little, one delay, one excuse at a time. Think about that for a moment. How many of your goals have been buried under the weight of what-ifs? How many times have you felt inspired to act, but didn't, because of fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough? Fear doesn't just keep you from failing. It also keeps you from succeeding. It robs you of opportunities, relationships, ideas, and moments you'll never get back. Every hesitation, every doubt, is fear quietly stealing your dreams away. In the interview, Hill demands that the devil explain how he gains control of people's lives. The answer is chilling, through drifting. Drifting is what happens when you live without a clear purpose, when you let distractions guide your days, when you avoid the discomfort of growth and opt instead for ease and routine. The devil says he owns the minds of people who drift, because people without direction are the easiest to manipulate. But here's the thing, this devil doesn't need to be real to be dangerous. Whether you believe Hill actually interviewed some dark entity or not doesn't matter. What matters is that this fictional conversation reveals a truth we all feel but rarely speak aloud. Most of the time, our biggest enemy is ourselves. We give fear too much power. We let it shape our decisions, our routines, even our identities. And because fear is often quiet, because it dresses up as logic or caution or responsibility, we don't recognize when it's speaking. We think we're being smart or safe, when really we're just scared. Scared to try, scared to fail, scared to be seen. But here's the truth, fear will never leave you. You can't wait for it to disappear. The key isn't to eliminate fear, it's to stop giving it control. The people who achieve greatness don't do so because they feel no fear. They do it because they act in spite of it. Hill's interview is a wake-up call. It's a challenge to take back your mind before fear turns it against you. Because when you reclaim control over your thinking, when you set clear intentions, follow through on your decisions, and refuse to drift, you starve the devil. You silence fear. You put your dreams back in your hands where they belong. So take a moment right now to ask yourself, where is fear showing up in your life? What has it convinced you not to do? What have you talked yourself out of, not because it was wrong, but because it was uncomfortable? How much longer will you let fear write your story? You are stronger than the voice in your head that says, you're not ready. You are more capable than the doubts trying to hold you back. And the only way fear can win is if you let it. Reclaim your thoughts. Reclaim your purpose. And stop waiting for fear to go away. Instead, move forward with it. Walk through it. And as you do, you'll realize something powerful. Fear was never as big as it pretended to be. It just sounded loud in your silence. But the moment you speak back, when you choose courage over comfort, you take your power back. And that's where your real life begins. Have you ever paused and asked yourself, am I truly choosing the life I'm living, or am I just going along with whatever comes my way? In Chapter 4 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill dives deep into one of the most dangerous, yet least recognized, traps that people fall into: drifting. According to Hill, drifting isn't just about being lazy or unmotivated. It's much more serious. It's a state of mind, a way of living, where you stop being intentional about your thoughts, your choices, your goals, and your direction. You start reacting instead of creating. You become a passenger in your own life, letting external circumstances, other people's opinions, and daily distractions guide your path. And the scariest part? Most people don't even realize they're drifting. Drifting is what happens when you stop questioning your routines. You wake up, go to work, scroll your phone, and repeat the same cycle day after day, without asking yourself why. You settle into comfort zones not because they fulfill you, but because they're familiar. You avoid hard decisions, not because you can't make them, but because making them would mean taking responsibility. And so, slowly your life starts to feel dull, flat, even directionless. That's drifting. You're not lost because you made a wrong turn. You're lost because you stopped steering. Hill says that the devil owns the minds of those who drift. It's a powerful metaphor that hits harder the more you think about it. When you live without purpose, you become vulnerable to anything that offers temporary pleasure, instant distraction, or the illusion of safety. You give up your long-term growth for short-term comfort. You stop pursuing excellence and start chasing ease. You stop dreaming and start settling. And over time, you forget that you ever had control in the first place. But drifting doesn't always look dramatic. It often looks ordinary. It looks like putting off your goals because now isn't the right time. It looks like following a career path just because it's what people expect. It looks like spending hours numbing your thoughts with social media, entertainment, or shallow conversations instead of investing time into personal growth, creativity, or meaningful relationships. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's deadly to your potential. Look at your last year. Did you really choose your path, or did you just drift wherever life pushed you? That's not an easy question to answer, but it's one of the most important questions you can ask. Because if you don't choose where you're going, someone else will. And chances are, They won't choose what's best for you. They'll choose what's best for them. Purpose isn't something you stumble into. It's something you commit to. It's a decision you make every single day. It means waking up and asking, what am I moving toward? It means setting goals that matter, even when they're hard. It means making sacrifices, taking responsibility, and doing the work no one else can do for you. And yes, it means being uncomfortable sometimes. But that discomfort is what separates growth from stagnation, clarity from confusion, and living from merely existing. You don't need to have your entire future figured out to stop drifting. You just need to start paying attention. Ask yourself, what do I really want? What are the habits and patterns that are pulling me off course? What's one thing I can do today to take back control of my direction? You don't need massive changes overnight. What you need is momentum. A decision followed by action, followed by consistency. Drifting feels easier because it demands nothing. But that's also why it gives you nothing. You'll never build a fulfilling life by accident. Fulfillment comes from living with intention, from pursuing something bigger than comfort, from having a reason to wake up in the morning that actually excites you. And that reason doesn't need to be big or flashy. It just needs to be yours. So if you've been drifting, if you've been living on autopilot, letting days slip by without meaning, this is your call to wake up, to re-engage with your life, to start steering again. The moment you choose purpose over passivity, everything begins to change. Your energy shifts, your mindset sharpens, your goals come back into focus. You remember that your life isn't something to react to, it's something to design. And even if you don't know exactly what your purpose is yet, that's okay. What matters is that you stop drifting and start searching. Because the truth is, you were never meant to float through life aimlessly. You were meant to lead, to build, to create, and to contribute. You were meant to live with purpose. So start now. Choose direction, choose growth, choose to show up for your own life, because no one else can do that for you. One of the hardest truths you'll ever have to face is this. Most of what's holding you back isn't out there in the world, it's inside you. In Chapter 5 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill forces us to confront a painful but liberating realization. The cycle of failure doesn't begin with a lack of opportunity or talent. It begins with the habits and thoughts we allow to take root in our daily lives. It begins with how we respond to fear, how we avoid discomfort, and how we rationalize our own inaction. And unless we're willing to take an honest look at those patterns, we'll keep repeating them, no matter how many times we promise ourselves we're ready for change. Think about how easy it is to fall into the trap of procrastination. You have a goal, a big one, a meaningful one, but instead of working toward it, you put it off. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow, or next week, or when life gets less stressful. But somehow, later keeps getting pushed further away. You trade progress for temporary comfort, because progress requires effort, discipline, and sometimes facing uncomfortable truths. And that's exactly what the cycle of failure feeds on: delay, distraction, and avoidance. It doesn't need you to quit outright. It just needs you to keep saying, not yet. Distraction is another powerful enemy. In a world that constantly demands your attention, it's easy to mistake being busy for being productive. You scroll, you click, you consume content, always moving, always stimulated, but deep down, you know you're avoiding the one thing that really matters. The truth is, distraction is often a way of escaping self-doubt. If you stay busy enough, maybe you won't have to deal with the fear that you're not enough, or that you might fail, or that you're falling behind. But avoiding that fear doesn't make it disappear. It only gives it more power. Self-doubt is perhaps the most subtle, but the most damaging habit of all. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It tells you that you're not ready, that you're not qualified, that someone else could do it better. And so, you shrink, you hold back, you stop raising your hand, you stop trying altogether. You protect yourself from the possibility of failure, but in doing so, you guarantee it. That's the cruel irony of self-doubt. It feels like self-protection, but it's really self-sabotage. How often do you put off big dreams for small comforts? How often do you choose what's easy now instead of what matters most in the long run? These are not just bad habits, they're survival strategies. But they're strategies built on fear, not truth. And real change doesn't happen until we stop lying to ourselves. It begins with brutal honesty. You have to be willing to admit where you've been hiding, where you've been drifting, and where you've let fear make your decisions. You have to face the parts of yourself that you'd rather ignore, the parts that procrastinate, that distract, that give up too soon. Hill's insight is that the devil, as he calls it, thrives in silence. It lives in the thoughts we don't challenge, in the excuses we repeat so often they start to sound like facts. But the moment you speak the truth, your truth, you start to reclaim your power. The moment you say, "I've been getting in my own way," you create the space to get out of it. That kind of self-awareness is not weakness. It's the foundation of transformation. Because once you can see your patterns clearly, you can choose something different. You can break the cycle. Breaking the cycle doesn't mean never failing again. It means no longer being surprised by failure and no longer being controlled by it. It means building better habits, one decision at a time. It means learning how to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. It means trading the illusion of safety for the reality of growth. And most of all, it means forgiving yourself for the past, not so you can repeat it, but so you can move forward without dragging it behind you. This process isn't easy, but it is necessary. Because the longer you wait to face the truth, the longer you stay stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. The truth is, the life you want, the one you dream about when no one else is around, is on the other side of those habits. It's on the other side of your excuses. And it starts with a decision to be honest, to be intentional, and to stop living on autopilot. So if you're ready to change, start here. Tell yourself the truth. Not the filtered version, not the version that blames everyone else, the real truth about where you are, how you got there, and what it's going to take to get somewhere new. That level of honesty might sting, but it will also set you free. And that's when the cycle of failure begins to break. Not with a dramatic breakthrough, but with a quiet, courageous choice to stop running and start rebuilding. You're not stuck because life is unfair. You're stuck because you haven't yet claimed the authority to rewrite your patterns. But the moment you do, everything changes. Not all at once, not overnight, but piece by piece, truth by truth, choice by choice. And it starts now. There's a force shaping your life right now, whether you realize it or not. It's quiet, invisible, and deeply powerful. It's not something you were taught to recognize, and yet it has more influence over your success, your failure, your decisions, and your future than almost anything else. Napoleon Hill calls it hypnotic rhythm, a state of living where your daily habits, thoughts, and choices run on autopilot. It's the invisible trap that most people never escape, not because they can't, but because they don't even know they're in it. Hypnotic rhythm is what happens when you stop being intentional. When you do something once, it's just an action. But do it over and over, day after day, and it becomes automatic. That's the rhythm. It starts with simple things: snoozing your alarm, skipping a workout, putting off a decision. None of it feels dangerous in the moment, but over time, it builds a pattern, a way of living that becomes hardwired into your mind and body. And before you know it, you're not choosing your life anymore. You're just repeating it. Think about how you start your mornings. Do you wake up with purpose, or do you reach for your phone and scroll without thinking? Think about how you handle discomfort. Do you face it, or do you distract yourself? Think about your goals. Do you move toward them every day, or do they sit on the shelf while you stay busy with everything else? These are not just questions about productivity. They are questions about control. Because every repeated action is a vote for the person you're becoming. And if you're not consciously designing your life, you're unconsciously drifting through it. Hill's concept of hypnotic rhythm reveals something many people don't want to admit. Your life today is the result of what you've been doing every day for the last few months or even years. Your habits have momentum. They don't care if they're good or bad, helpful or harmful. They just run. They operate beneath your awareness, steering your behavior without asking for permission. That's why breaking out of a rut feels so hard, because it's not just about making a new choice. It's about interrupting a cycle that has been reinforced through repetition, emotion, and time. And here's the most dangerous part of all. Hypnotic rhythm doesn't feel wrong. It feels normal. That's why it's so effective. You might feel a sense of frustration, restlessness, or even emptiness, but you won't always connect those feelings to your routines. You might think your problem is external, your job, your relationship, your circumstances, when in reality, it's the rhythm you've unconsciously created. You've trained yourself into patterns of thinking and behavior that no longer serve you. And unless you wake up to that truth, you'll stay stuck, even as you keep moving. So how do you break the pattern? First, you have to become aware of it. Start paying attention to the things you do without thinking. Track your time. Notice where your energy goes. Be brutally honest about your routines, especially the small ones. Because in the end, it's the little habits that shape the big results. You don't need to overhaul your life in a single day. You just need to start interrupting the rhythm. That might mean getting up 30 minutes earlier to read or reflect. It might mean setting limits on how much time you spend online. It might mean doing the hard thing first instead of putting it off. These actions may feel small, but what you're really doing is rewiring your brain, teaching it a new rhythm, one that aligns with the life you actually want to live. You also have to be patient, because the rhythm didn't start overnight, and it won't stop overnight either. But every conscious decision you make begins to shift the pattern. Every time you choose presence over distraction, effort over ease, or discipline over delay, you weaken the grip of the old rhythm and create space for a new one to take hold. This is where freedom begins. Not in some dramatic moment of change, but in the quiet, consistent act of choosing awareness over autopilot. The moment you take back your focus, you take back your power. The moment you stop living by default and start living by design, you begin to reclaim your future. So take a moment to reflect. What rhythms are you living in right now? Are they pulling you forward or holding you back? Are they building the life you want or the one you settled for? This is your chance to wake up, not just today, but every day. Because your habits are not just what you do, they're who you become. And if you don't interrupt the patterns that are keeping you stuck, they will become the story of your life. But if you choose to wake up, to pay attention, to design your days with intention and courage, then that rhythm, the one that once held you back, can become the very force that carries you forward. That's the real transformation, and it starts the moment you stop drifting and decide to lead your life again. Fear doesn't start as a storm, it starts as a whisper. It begins as a small, almost unnoticeable thought, one that quietly slips into your mind and takes root. At first, it might sound like caution. It might even sound reasonable. A quick hesitation before you speak up. A silent question in the back of your mind. What if this doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? You brush it off, move on, but that seed has already been planted. And like any seed, if it's given time, attention, and repetition, it begins to grow. In Chapter 7 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill describes this process with piercing clarity. He reminds us that fear is not something we are born with. It's something we learn, something we allow, and most importantly, something we can unlearn. Over time, these small fearful thoughts accumulate. One doubt leads to another. One hesitation turns into a pattern. You begin to build your life around avoiding discomfort rather than chasing purpose. You start playing small, not because you're incapable, but because you've convinced yourself that it's safer that way. And before you realize it, fear has become the lens through which you see everything. Opportunities look like threats. Growth feels like danger. And any action outside your comfort zone triggers anxiety, not excitement. The whisper has grown louder. It no longer questions your choices. It questions your identity. This is how fear becomes your default setting. And the most dangerous part is, it often doesn't feel like fear. It feels like logic. It feels like being responsible, careful, realistic. It disguises itself as self-preservation. But in truth, it's self-sabotage wearing a mask. Because fear, when left unchecked, doesn't protect your life. It limits it. It convinces you to stay where it's safe, where it's familiar, even if that space is slowly draining your potential. So how do we deal with it? First, we have to stop believing that fear is always a signal to stop. Sometimes, fear is just a sign that we're doing something new, something meaningful. The presence of fear isn't proof that you're weak. It's proof that you're stepping into something uncertain. And that's exactly where growth lives. but you can't fight what you won't face. That's why awareness is everything. You have to catch the thought while it's still a whisper. You have to pause and ask, where did this fear come from? Who gave it to me? And more importantly, do I want to keep carrying it? Hill teaches that fear becomes powerful only when we nurture it. When we repeat fearful thoughts over and over again, they become beliefs. And once something becomes a belief, it starts to dictate our behavior without us even realizing it. You won't just think you might fail, you'll act like someone who's destined to fail. You'll make smaller moves. You'll avoid risk. You'll stay in jobs, relationships, routines that no longer serve you. Not because they're good for you, but because they're familiar, and fear tells you that's enough. But here's the truth. Every belief you have was planted at some point, which means it can be replaced. If fear was learned, then courage can be learned too. Courage doesn't mean the fear goes away. It means you choose to move forward even when the fear is still there. And the more you practice courage, the quieter fear becomes. The more you prove to yourself that you can survive discomfort, the less power fear has over you. Next time fear whispers in your ear, remember, you planted that seed, but you can also uproot it. You are not your fear. You are not your past failures. You are not the anxious thoughts that rush through your head late at night. You are the one who gets to decide what grows in your mind. You are the one who can choose to plant something different, something stronger. So what will you plant? Will you plant thoughts of doubt or thoughts of belief? Will you water fear with attention or will you feed courage with action? The mind, just like a garden, doesn't care what you plant. It will grow whatever you choose. But once it grows, it will shape how you see the world, how you feel about yourself, and how you respond to life's challenges. The next time fear shows up, don't try to ignore it. Acknowledge it. Get curious about it. But don't let it drive. Don't let it choose your direction. Because the life you want, the freedom, the fulfillment, the peace, it's on the other side of that fear. And every time you act in spite of fear, you get closer to it. Every time you choose courage, even in the smallest way, you are reclaiming your life from the control of fear. So don't wait for fear to go away. It won't. But you can stop letting it be the one who decides what you're capable of. You can speak back to it. You can rise above it. And when you do, you'll realize that fear was never the problem. It was the invitation. The question it was asking you all along was simple. Are you going to let me lead, or are you ready to lead yourself? One of the most powerful truths revealed in Napoleon Hill's Outwitting the Devil is this. Without a clear purpose, life becomes nothing more than a random walk. You may feel busy, you may even feel productive, but without direction, you're just drifting, responding to life rather than creating it. In Chapter 8, Hill introduces the concept of definiteness of purpose as the antidote to fear, distraction, and failure. It's not just about having dreams or vague ambitions. It's about making a conscious, committed decision about where you're going and why it matters. Because when your purpose is clear, your actions become focused, your mind becomes stronger, and fear has less room to grow. Purpose is what steadies you when everything else feels uncertain. It's what gives meaning to your effort, even when results haven't shown up yet. When you don't know your purpose, you hesitate, you question yourself, you chase approval. You get caught in the trap of doing what's expected instead of what's right for you. But when your purpose is clear, you start living with boldness. You make decisions faster. You stop apologizing for wanting more. You stop comparing yourself to others because you know exactly what you're working toward. Hill makes it plain. The devil, that force of fear, laziness, and mental drift, can only take root in the minds of those who have no definite aim in life. When you don't know where you're going, every distraction becomes appealing. Every delay seems justified. You start choosing comfort over challenge, habit over growth. But once you fix your mind on a clear purpose, everything changes. You begin to filter your decisions differently. You stop asking, what's easiest, and start asking, what moves me closer to my goal? Think about the people you admire, whether they're entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, or everyday heroes. What do they all have in common? It's not luck. It's not talent alone. It's clarity. They knew what they were fighting for. They had a purpose, and they built their lives around it. That doesn't mean they didn't fail. It means they knew what was worth failing for. and that's the difference. Without purpose, failure feels final. But with purpose, failure becomes feedback. So ask yourself, what is the one goal worth fighting for in your life? What's the thing that if you achieved it would make you proud of who you had to become to get there? Don't overthink it. Don't try to make it perfect. Just get honest. Write it down. Pursue it fiercely. That's your armor against fear. That's your foundation when life gets shaky. That's your anchor when everything else is uncertain. Purpose doesn't have to be grand or public. It just has to be real. Maybe your purpose is to be the first in your family to break a generational cycle. Maybe it's to build something that matters, to tell stories that heal, to lead with integrity, or simply to become the kind of person you respect. It doesn't matter what your purpose is. What matters is that you choose one and live by it. This is how definiteness of purpose defeats fear. Fear feeds on uncertainty. It grows in the cracks of indecision. But when you're grounded in purpose, fear starts to lose its grip. You still feel it, but it doesn't stop you. Because now you have a reason to keep going, a reason to show up, a reason to fight through the setbacks and stay focused even when things get hard. And let's be honest, things will get hard. You'll doubt yourself. You'll face criticism. You'll want to quit. But when you have a clear purpose, you won't confuse hard with impossible. You'll keep showing up because you know why you started. You'll learn how to work through fear instead of waiting for it to disappear. And with every step, you'll become someone who no longer lets life just happen, but someone who creates it with intention and courage. So take the time. Don't just wish for a better life. Define it. Choose what you're working toward. Write it down. Keep it visible. Remind yourself of it daily. Because the moment you clarify your purpose is the moment you take your power back. You no longer need to chase approval because you're pursuing something greater. You no longer get lost in comparison because your race has its own finish line. You no longer feel paralyzed by fear because purpose has given you something bigger to believe in. Your life is too important to be left up to chance. The world will try to distract you, discourage you, and convince you to settle. But you don't have to. You can decide right now that your life will have direction, that your choices will have meaning, that your days will be shaped by a vision, not by circumstance. And that decision, the one you make today, with clarity and commitment, might just be the one that changes everything. Education and religion are two of the most powerful forces shaping the way we think, act, and live. They have the potential to guide people toward greatness, or to keep them locked inside invisible cages. In Chapter 9 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill challenges us to question the systems we've been raised in. He doesn't dismiss the importance of education or the role of faith, but he asks a bold question. Are these institutions empowering us to think freely or conditioning us to obey without question? His answer is uncomfortable, but necessary. According to Hill, much of what we call education and religion has been stripped of its power to inspire and liberate, and has instead been used to control, restrict, and keep people afraid of thinking for themselves. True education isn't about memorizing information or following rules. It's about learning how to think. It's about developing the ability to question, to reason, to explore ideas, and to reach your own conclusions. It's about cultivating the strength to say, that doesn't make sense to me, or I want to understand this more deeply. Real education opens your mind instead of narrowing it. It teaches you how to evaluate the world critically instead of accepting everything at face value. But too often, the system focuses on compliance over curiosity, performance over purpose. Students are taught to pass tests, follow instructions, and stay within the lines, when what they really need is the confidence to ask bigger questions and think beyond what's been handed to them. The same is true for religion. Faith, at its best, is one of the most beautiful sources of strength and hope. It can connect people to something greater than themselves, offer comfort in hardship, and inspire a life of compassion and purpose. But when religion is used to instill fear instead of love, guilt instead of grace, and conformity instead of growth, it stops being a path to freedom and becomes a tool for control. Hill argues that many people live not by faith, but by fear disguised as faith. They're taught to be afraid of making mistakes, of questioning authority, of thinking differently. But that's not real faith. That's spiritual conditioning. Real faith doesn't hold you back, it sets you free. It doesn't demand that you suppress your questions. It encourages you to seek your own answers. True belief isn't fragile. It doesn't fall apart when you explore new ideas or challenge old ones. On the contrary, it becomes stronger, deeper, more grounded. The same applies to knowledge. Real education doesn't just give you facts, it gives you freedom. Freedom to choose your path, to change your mind, to become more than what the world expects of you. It teaches you that critical thinking is not rebellion, it's responsibility. This is not about rejecting school or abandoning religion. It's about reclaiming them, bringing them back to their original purposes, to elevate the human spirit, to awaken the mind, to empower people to live with wisdom and purpose. Imagine if every classroom encouraged students not just to memorize, but to reflect. Imagine if every place of worship reminded people that love is stronger than fear, and that faith is not about following blindly, but about living boldly. We must stop treating children like empty containers to be filled with other people's ideas. We must stop training them to fear failure, to avoid risk, to silence their doubts. Instead, we must teach them how to think, how to listen to their own voice, and develop the courage to follow it. That is the only kind of education that leads to freedom. That is the only kind of faith that leads to growth. Ask yourself, were you taught to think for yourself or to follow the rules without question? Were you encouraged to ask why or told to just accept things because that's the way it is? These questions matter because the answers reveal whether you've been set up to grow or conditioned to stay small. If your education taught you how to obey but not how to lead, it failed you. If your religion taught you how to feel guilty but not how to feel empowered, it failed you too. But here's the good news. You can re-educate yourself. You can rediscover faith in a way that liberates instead of limits. You can ask new questions, seek deeper truths, and learn how to use your mind and your heart with purpose. You're not bound to what you were taught as a child. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to question. You are allowed to outgrow beliefs that no longer align with your values. That's not betrayal. That's maturity. In the end, what Hill is saying is simple, but profound. Your mind belongs to you. Your beliefs belong to you. And your life belongs to you. Don't give that power away, not to a school, not to a system, not even to a sacred text, without first running it through the filter of your own understanding. Trust your ability to learn, to grow, and to discern what's true for you. Real education and real faith don't teach you to be afraid. They teach you to be alive. They remind you that the highest authority in your life isn't outside of you, it's within. And once you start living from that place, you'll find a kind of freedom that no one can take away. That's the kind of mind the world needs. That's the kind of soul the world is waiting for. And that's the kind of power that comes from choosing truth over tradition and courage over comfort. There's a truth that separates those who merely dream from those who actually build the life they want. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's not having the perfect plan or waiting for the right moment. It's discipline. In Chapter 10 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill lays it out clearly. Your greatest victory in life will not be over anyone else. It will be over yourself. Over your impulses, your distractions, your excuses. Discipline is the cornerstone of all lasting success. And without it, even the best intentions fall apart. We often hear the word discipline and immediately think of restriction, of suffering, of saying no to everything we want. But true discipline isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. It's about learning how to consistently choose what matters most over what's easiest right now. It's the internal commitment to act according to your values, your goals, and your vision, even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because that's when it matters most. Discipline is what transforms goals into achievements. Anyone can set a goal. Anyone can write down a dream, build a vision board, or talk about what they want. But only a few will follow through. Only a few will keep showing up after the excitement fades. Only a few will do the hard, unglamorous work day after day, not because it's fun, but because it's necessary. And those few, they're not superhuman. They're disciplined. They've made a decision that excuses are no longer welcome in their lives. Discipline gives you freedom. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's true. When you lack discipline, You become a slave to your moods, your temptations, your environment. You spend your time reacting instead of creating. You follow wherever impulse leads you, and often that path leads to regret. But with discipline, you create structure. You build habits that support your growth. You protect your energy, your time, your focus. You no longer rely on motivation because your actions are backed by commitment. And that's what makes discipline so powerful. It doesn't depend on how you feel. It's there when you're tired. It's there when no one's watching. It's there when fear tries to talk you out of doing the work. Discipline is the voice that says, I don't negotiate with my goals. It's the part of you that shows up with integrity, not perfection. Because discipline doesn't mean never failing. It means not quitting. It means getting back up every time you fall. It means deciding again and again that your vision is more important than your comfort. You don't build discipline by waiting to feel ready. You build it by doing the small, difficult things every single day. By making your bed when no one's watching. By writing that email, showing up to that workout, saying no to that distraction. Discipline is not about one big decision. It's about 1,000 small ones. And over time, those small choices shape your identity. They tell your mind, I am the kind of person who follows through. And that belief, that self-trust, is where real transformation begins. Hill argues that without discipline, we become easy targets for the devil, his metaphor for fear, procrastination, and mental drift. And he's right. Without discipline, we're vulnerable to whatever feels good in the moment, even if it pulls us further from what we truly want. But with discipline, we build armor. We become less reactive, more focused, more resilient. We stop being driven by emotions and start being guided by intention. It's not glamorous, it's not always inspiring, but it works. Discipline is what allows ordinary people to achieve extraordinary lives, because no one feels powerful every day. No one wakes up every morning with fire in their chest. But the people who succeed are the ones who act anyway, who keep promises to themselves even when no one else would notice if they didn't, who choose long-term peace over short-term pleasure. So if you're waiting for motivation, stop. Start building discipline instead. Set small goals and follow through on them. Create routines that support your growth. Cut out the distractions that drain you. And every time you feel resistance, every time your mind tries to bargain with you, remember this. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about choosing growth over comfort again and again until that choice becomes your default setting. Your life doesn't change when you make one big decision. It changes when you commit to one decision and repeat it every day. That's the power of discipline. It's quiet, it's simple, but it will change your life more than anything else ever could. So start today. Choose one area where you've been inconsistent, your health, your focus, your time, your mindset, and commit to one disciplined action. Keep it simple, but keep it daily, because over time, discipline becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Your greatest victory will always be mastering yourself. And that's a battle worth fighting every single day. Life doesn't move in a straight line. It twists, it turns, it throws curveballs when you least expect them. And often, just when you think you're making progress, you're hit with a setback that leaves you questioning everything. In Chapter 11 of Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill challenges us to look at adversity through a different lens, not as punishment, but as preparation. He reminds us that every failure, every obstacle, every painful chapter holds within it the seed of something greater, something you wouldn't have discovered if life had only gone your way. Setbacks feel personal. They feel like a loss of momentum, a betrayal of effort, or even a sign that we were never good enough to begin with. But that's the illusion. The truth is, adversity is one of life's greatest teachers. It strips away the unnecessary. It reveals your blind spots. It tests your resilience. And most importantly, it gives you a choice to grow bitter or to grow stronger. The people who achieve anything meaningful in this life didn't get there by avoiding adversity. They got there by learning how to turn it into fuel. Reframing failure as a stepping stone rather than a dead end is the first step toward reclaiming your power. Think about the times you grew the most. Were they easy? Were they predictable? Probably not. Growth rarely happens in moments of comfort. It happens when you're stretched beyond what you thought you could handle. It happens when your plans fall apart and you're forced to find a different way forward. That's where strength is forged, in the tension, in the confusion, in the struggle. Adversity has a way of waking you up. It makes you reassess your values, your priorities, your sense of identity. It breaks down the ego so that something more honest, more grounded, and more durable can take its place. But only if you let it. Because not everyone who faces adversity becomes stronger. Some let it define them, defeat them, or make them smaller. The difference isn't in the pain, it's in the perspective. You are not defined by what happens to you. You are defined by how you respond to what happens to you. Your greatest moments often come disguised as setbacks. They come in the form of rejection, loss, failure, or uncertainty. But underneath those experiences is a chance to become someone new, to develop strength you didn't know you had, to gain clarity you couldn't access before. That's not just poetic, it's practical. Because when you reframe adversity as growth, you stop seeing it as the enemy and start using it as an ally. Some of the most successful people in the world credit their breakthroughs to the lowest points in their lives. They talk about hitting rock bottom, losing everything, being counted out, only to find in that darkness the very drive that would take them to new heights. Why? Because adversity forces you to choose. Will I stay down or will I rise? Will I use this or will I let it use me? That's the defining moment. Hill encourages us not to fear adversity, but to embrace it, to lean into the discomfort and ask, what is this here to teach me? That shift in mindset changes everything. It keeps you moving when others stop. It helps you extract value from even the hardest seasons, and it transforms your pain into purpose. Of course, this mindset doesn't make adversity easier. It doesn't remove the sting of disappointment or the weight of failure, but it gives those experiences meaning. It prevents them from becoming meaningless suffering. When you decide that nothing is wasted, that every experience is a part of your evolution, you build emotional armor. You become more agile, more focused, more resilient. And that resilience, that's the real reward, because life will not always go according to plan. You will fall, you will get hurt. But the question isn't whether you'll face adversity. The question is whether you'll use it, whether you'll rise from it sharper, wiser, and more aligned than you were before. Whether you'll look back and say, that didn't break me, it built me. So the next time life pushes you down, don't rush to escape the discomfort. Stay there for a moment. Listen, learn. Let the setback show you what it's here for. Because hidden in the frustration is clarity. Hidden in the failure is feedback. Hidden in the pain is a kind of power that can't be accessed any other way. Don't fear adversity. Embrace it. Learn from it. Rise above it. The struggle you're facing today may be the very foundation of the strength you'll need tomorrow. And when you start to see adversity this way, something remarkable happens. You stop running from it. You start walking through it with purpose, with courage, and with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that even when life feels like it's falling apart, something deeper is being built. That's how you transform adversity into strength. Not by avoiding it, but by welcoming the lessons it brings. Not by hiding from the pain, but by rising through it. Because in the end, it's not the adversity that defines you. It's what you decide to do with it. At the heart of everything we've explored is one truth that echoes louder than any other. The greatest battle you'll ever fight is the one within yourself. It's not against other people, not against your circumstances, and not even against your failures. It's the battle to take back control of your own mind. The battle to conquer fear, silence self-doubt, break old habits, and live with clear purpose. And the only way to win that battle is to face it, honestly, bravely, and consistently. We began by exposing fear for what it really is. Not some external monster, but a whisper in the mind that grows stronger when you avoid it. We talked about how fear quietly controls your life, not with force, but with delay, hesitation, and doubt. But the moment you become aware of it, the moment you stop letting it sit silently in the background and start calling it by its name, it loses its power. Because fear only thrives in silence. And when you give voice to your purpose, your clarity, your discipline, it has no place to hide. Then we looked at the danger of drifting, of living without intention, of waking up every day without a goal and calling that a life. You can't wait for purpose to fall into your lap. You have to create it. You have to decide what matters to you and build your days around that. Because the truth is, when you don't choose a direction, the world chooses one for you. And chances are, it won't be a path that fulfills you. We talked about discipline, not as a punishment, but as a form of self-respect. The practice of choosing what matters most over what feels good right now. Discipline isn't just about showing up when it's easy. It's about showing up especially when it's not. Because that's when character is built. That's when momentum is formed. And that's when your identity begins to shift from someone who hopes to someone who commits. We reframed failure as an essential part of the process. Every setback carries within it the seed of success, but you have to be willing to dig for it. Adversity isn't something to fear. It's something to face, to learn from, and to rise above. Because every time life knocks you down, you're given a choice to stay there or to get back up stronger and wiser than before. And finally, we explored what it means to live on purpose, to create a life that's aligned with who you are, what you believe, and where you want to go. That kind of life doesn't happen by accident. It's built through clarity, intention, courage, and the refusal to settle for anything less than what sets your soul on fire. So here's your final reminder. You already have the power. You don't need permission. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to be fearless. You just need the courage to use the strength that's already inside you. You have what it takes to stop drifting, to confront your fear, to discipline your mind, and to walk forward with purpose. And you don't have to wait another day to start. The shift begins the moment you decide to take your power back. If today's message spoke to you, I encourage you to share your story in the comments below. Someone out there might need your words the same way you needed this one. Your breakthrough might inspire someone else to take their first step. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe to join this community, because this journey to self-mastery is one we're taking together. You're not alone, and you're not powerless. You're becoming. And that journey, as challenging as it may be, is the most important one you'll ever take.